Before we hear today's career journey, I'd just like to give a quick shout out to Podcorn. Podcorn is a new way to connect podcasters like myself with advertisers that are relevant to his or her channel, such as Learn From Others. Podcorn's site is super easy to navigate, and I receive updates when there are new opportunities. If you're a podcaster, be sure to check them out at podcorn.com. Being able to find supporters that align with my goals of sharing career journeys with the next generation will ensure this podcast will go on well into the future. Now, on to our next career journey.
This is Learn From Others, where we interview a cross-section of successful individuals so you can learn from their experiences, achievements, and even their mistakes. We ask 4 questions that will educate and inspire. Greg Stanley will be your guide as we join our guest on a journey from adolescent daydreaming to success in today's world. Join us on this adventure as we learn from others together.
Welcome to Learn From Others, where we help others succeed by sharing success. I'm very excited to introduce our special guest calling in from Laguna Beach, Wesley Geer. How you doing, Wes?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
I'm doing great as well. I love the sound of the ocean in the background. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, well, the sun popped out, so I figured I was driving home to do our podcast, and then I was thinking, man, I'd love to sit at the beach and get some sun. And I thought, well, why can't I sit in the sun and do the podcast?
That's awesome, man. Multitasking. Well, before you tell us what you're actually doing today, if you would, tell me what you wanted to be when you grew up.
Well, the first time I feel like I thought that I can't even remember feeling like I knew what I wanted to be, it was to be a rock star. But for me, it wasn't, I don't know, I don't really think it was attached to, maybe it was, I don't think it was attached to, like, people idolizing me or anything like that. It was more like I just love music. I wanted to create music. I wanted to play music in the live setting. I liked the idea of creating and sharing my art with large crowds of people.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Now, you wanted to be a musician when you grew up. Well, tell us, what do you do today?
I'm still a musician. It just took some different manifestations. Well, we'll probably get into that, but I played with Korn, and then that gig was going away as the original guy came back to his spot in the band, and so I was trying to figure out at that time, how can I use my passions and love for music, and then I kind of changed the paradigm, which was to ask the universe, if this is who I am in the world, surely I'm not sent here to suffer and struggle financially, so I asked God or the universe, name isn't important to me, whatever you want to call it, how can I help people and make a living with my art? And so that gave me the idea to do this thing called Rock to Recovery, which started out as a nonprofit where I get people to play music as a form of healing, and it's basically a music therapy company that started small and has done incredibly big, awesome things.
Yeah, so if you would, kind of walk us from when you wanted to be a rock star, let's say, and then your career path from there, because you did succeed at that, and then what was the trigger or the idea to do the recovery aspect of it? Could you tell us kind of your path and some of the stuff you were faced with and the challenges you faced that brought you to today?
Yeah, well, somebody was just telling me, hey, my nephew wants to get into music, and da-da-da, will you talk to him? Maybe you could tell him, give him a voice of it can be done, and inspire him. And I was like, I'm happy to do that. But for me, it was the opposite. I had my friends, we used to call it make it. Like, you don't think you can make it, right? We had to get record deals, right? In this world, it's very much everything. Everything is much more DIY and entrepreneurial. The bigger corporate world is waning to the individual, no matter what your career is. But, so for me, my friends would go, you don't think you can make it, do you? And I would turn on the radio and go, I'm pretty sure I can do that, And so what I'm getting at is, for me, it wasn't a choice, I mean, there's parts along the journey where you're trying to write a record and you're not inspired and you got to just pick up the guitar. And for anybody listening to this, I think what our goal is when we're hearing stories of others is we look for the similarities. So, maybe you're an art student or you're a builder or you're a dentist. We're not going to be inspired all the time. Sometimes we just got to pick up the book or the work and get into it. But for me, it wasn't really a choice. And then I think of, like, stories I've heard of guys like NBA stars who are down at the gym, shooting 1,000 free throws, So I don't know that they're, like, so much I think there's some element of personal choice, but I think it's like having such passion and such desire to get where we want to go, or at least in my case where I wanted to go, that I became really obsessed with it. And I think that could be potentially disheartening to people listening, because maybe they're like, well, I'm not passionate about anything, and that's okay too. I wasn't for periods of my life as well, but it was basically doing the work, really committing to it, and I was playing guitars 8 hours a day and practicing and being a self-starter. And then I would ask people who had careers that I really admired, or thought, wow, what a neat career, like the guy that edited our video. Now keep in mind, this is late 80s, so to edit video you had to have giant computers and all this stuff. I was like, wow, how'd you get to be a video editor? And he's like, man, I just did it. And even though it's a Nike cliche, that's what it is just do it, man. So I was just in this inspirational seminar, Landmark Forum, over the weekend, and we were talking about, people's stories, and I was thinking, and about going on through doubt and everything. I was thinking, man, I had so many crappy bands that didn't go anywhere. So again, to make that go into the world of similarities, it's okay if you're trying to be a writer and you work at a paper and it doesn't work out, and then you try to do some online column and that doesn't. We just do it. We keep going forward. And I kind of think, if you think of that famous, Sistine Chapel, Michelangelo painting of God reaching out to man, I really think that's how the universe works. I don't know what's going to happen a lot of times when I take action, but I know something can happen, and I really trust and have faith that the universe or God or whatever, manifestation, law of attraction will work in my favor, And so, I just kept doing it, and I didn't give up. And I saw enough response to what I was doing as I went from being a 15-year-old guitar player to having my first band to this and that. Enough response from people that gave me enough inspiration to keep going.
So now, when do you feel like you made it professionally as a guitarist? When was that moment? Was there one?
Again, back then, now we're going into the 90s, you still needed a record deal. And so my first band to get a record deal, we were a little older, mid to late 20s than most bands, we felt. So we felt like, we were kind of like, we were really insecure, like, is it too late for us starting yet another new band? And so, but we created something that started really attracting people and selling out clubs everywhere. And so we got that first record deal, and that was the first sign of but I think it would happen before then. My friend's dad was, he managed some big artists. He's kind of a legend in the 80s in the music biz, and I, of course, showed him all my crappy bands, and he'd always go, that's nice, Wes, good job. I could tell, it wasn't even resonating. And then I remember one day playing them, and this band was still really crappy, but I did this ripping dual harmony guitar solo, and it was recorded really well, and it was some really, I don't know, it was pretty impressive guitar playing. And he was like, wow, that's you? And then I knew, okay, now I got the ear of the guy who has the ear for my playing. So that was a big moment. But until we got the record deal, that was really it.
Yeah, so how did you transition and started to do the Rock for Recovery? What made you say, hey, I can use music to benefit others in a positive way?
Right. So we're going to tell that part of it, and it's Rock to Recovery, TO. Is the name of the organization. So I toured for a long time, and I struggled with addiction, and really bad. And I ended up in a treatment center, and I got sober. And I thought my career with music was done. Again, this was me telling the universe how I thought it was going to go. How do I know what the future holds? But I kept doing, which the cool thing about people, if you hear people in recovery and stuff like that, we come from really dark, hopeless places, and then we oftentimes find this miraculous success and transformation. But the way we get there is the same way the rest of the world can get there. And what it is was having a routine of spiritual practices and prayer and meditation and asking for guidance and trying to connect more to source than to fear and worry, connect to the things that make you feel good rather than get run around by all the thoughts of doubt and impending doom and potential failure. So when I got sober, I didn't think I would ever do music again. You can't do music sober because I had just attached it to all the partying. And that wasn't the case. I decided after about 6 years sober, I got sober, and then I got loaded again at almost 3 years, and I was sober again a couple of years. So it was my second bout of sobriety, but into recovery for about almost 6 years. And I started meditating like, I want to play music again. It's too painful to not play. I really want to, and I didn't know what that was going to look like because I wasn't going to get back in a van and play in some punk band. I was about 40 years old at the time. I wasn't going to go out like some 23-year-old and be with a bunch of smelly boys in a van broke.
Right.
So I had kind of some terms, and so I started meditating, doing this awe meditation. It's Wayne Dyer did it. He's since passed on, but we literally go while you meditate and visualize what you want to attract in your life. I want to attract, get back into music, and I swear to you, all this weird, I could tell you endless stories, but for sake of time, all this weird serendipitous alignment stuff started happening, and within 10 days of wanting to get into my music career, back into music in some way, I got a text from Korn, from Monkey, asking me to come play guitar with them, and I hadn't spoke to the Korn guys in years and years and years. So, you could say, well, that's just a coincidence. Like, okay.
Right.
So that's how I got back into music. And then, like I said at the beginning of the broadcast, I was in that. I got to tour around the world totally sober. When that gig was going away and I felt, some self-pity for losing this super rock star gig and going back to, like, what is my job and what's my career, I just asked, how can I be of service and be a musician and be of service to the world, which, again, that's something we get a lot of in recovery. But I think that people who aren't in recovery, who live great, inspired lives, just come to that automatically. For us who struggle with addiction, we kind of got to be taught how to, like, get out of yourself and stop making everything about you and the car and the chick and what you need. And you find that people who have great success in life, there's some jerks and people who feel like they're evil out there in the business world for sure, but these people you hear these incredible stories are people who've really made their business model about serving others, whether you're a waiter, a chef, a cop, a doctor. We're really out there offering a service to people in almost every aspect of what we do. And so when I brought that into the equation, I feel like the whole skies opened up. I started doing this music therapy in a treatment center in an effort to get the utilization of music to be more present and proliferated throughout the world. And at first it was very raw. It was me by myself. I was scared. I didn't know how it was going to work. I just had a kind of a rough concept. And fast forward from there, I pitched it for 5 months. People would go, that's a great idea. You want to hire me? No. Just like the bands, man. But I didn't give up. And I like to say this too. It wasn't so much out of virtue as desperation, or it wasn't out of virtue, but out of, need, circumstance more than virtue that forced me to press on. So I'm not trying to say I'm like Mr. Spiritual Guy that I just don't give up. I didn't give up because I had no other choice, and I had to push on. So finally, after 5 months, somebody hired me, and it was very raw, but they believed in me, and they gave me a chance. And fast forward, now I got, 13 employees. We do 500 sessions a month. We got a contract with the Department of Defense to work with Air Force and other wounded veterans. We just today picked up a contract with the Navy. We started because I'm a sober guy. I created these sober events to fund our nonprofit where we honor guys like Corey Taylor from Slipknot and Stone Sour and Mike Ness from Social Ocean and Katie Seagal from Married with Children. And so really it was the asking, where do you want me? How can I help others that continue to manifest and take my passion and what I care about and bring it into a world in a very powerful way.
Yeah, that's really amazing. And typically right now I'd ask, what is your typical work week like? Could you tell me more about the type of sessions you have and the events you host? You just kind of rattled off a bunch of them, but what are the different forms in which your recovery programs take shape?
Yeah, so now I'm running the company. I have Rock Recovery is manifested into a radio show / podcast. I'm trying to be a visionary for the company. We're writing a book about the work we do. It's really about taking the seed and seeing how big we can grow this thing, how big the tree with how many branches, without being greedy or overzealous or whatever, but in more of a motivation to reach and help more people. So now I'm not running sessions like I used to. my week is spending a lot of time reading, meditating, learning, growing, and asking for guidance. I think that's a big one. I think so many people don't do that enough, is like kind of create space and go, where do you want me? I spend a lot of time doing that and booking podcasts and doing stuff like this and getting out there and going to marketing events, practicing guitar. I still have another band called Human coming out, which is HU3M3N, like Nancy. So I'm still keeping creative, but I'm a business owner, and so it's my job to be a visionary and create an environment for my employees that is a great work environment so they feel loved and supported. And then I have to not, I could collect income and be lazy, but I feel inspired to continue to create a strong organization. And if you remember at the beginning of the recording, whatever, my goal was to think about my legacy and create something that could live beyond my years and still help people. So after I'm dead and gone, I want rock recovery still out there helping people. So we're looking at, it's a very unique model we have. It's a very unique brand of music therapy, so I'm looking to make a very strong organization that can stand the test of time, which gets into like taxes and corporations and all insurances and all this annoying, unfun stuff. And also to
Right.
look where can we reach? Like, who can we reach? Now, we started in addiction and mental health, but we just did this Pretenders Dance studio, which works with young girls, and we wrote a song with them that they wrote and recorded, and then they danced to it. So it keeps turning into beautiful, wonderful manifestation. So, yeah, it's multifaceted.
Yeah, there is, and it just keeps on growing, it sounds like. So that's really awesome. And it's really great to look at your legacy, creating something that will impact others for generations to come. I think that's a really great way to look at your career. Well, that's really cool. And for the record, I want all my podcasts to have crashing waves and seagulls in the background. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what it sounds like on your end. I know these little headset mics they're like compressor mics, so they make quiet things louder. So hopefully it doesn't sound like I'm in a torrential tsunami or something.
As a reminder, you can check out all previous episodes at learnfromothers.org. And if you're an educator or a student, you can search for podcasts by career cluster. So we learned what you wanted to be when you grew up, which was a rock star, and what you actually do today, which is a large part of that, as well as your recovery efforts. So looking back on your career, what would you do differently?
That's hard because it splits me right down the middle. I believe everything happens for a reason. I believe we learn more in our losses than our victories. I would, just on a spiritual, conceptual, existential level, I really wouldn't want to change anything because it made me who I am. I guess if there's something, I would say that I would have wished that I handled my addiction earlier. But again, I'd still be stuck in that band with that singer who is nowhere near getting sober, and he's just a dark energy. So, but anyhow, I guess, getting sober sooner would have been nice, and because I love this life, it's great to lead an inspired life.
Yeah, that's great to recognize that. Well, let's talk to the students out there. If someone wanted to do what you do now, I'm interested to see how you define this. What advice would you give them? Now, that could be as a music therapist, as a recovery expert, as an entrepreneur. You got a lot of facets to what you're doing here. So what advice would you give someone?
As much as we could say, like, well, if somebody's listening, they want to be a lawyer, and they're like, well, this guy's got nothing for me. I disagree. I think it's all the same. I think it's about taking action, and I think that's really where we activate ourselves, where, this universe runs on frequency and vibration, and when we take action, the universe meets us at where we're at. So if you, the way even any career realm changes, it's never ending. So, to say, like, this is what I did, do what I did, I don't know if there's any career where you want to follow somebody else's exact template. I think it's about getting out there and creating your own version of your own story of success. Sure, maybe, if you want to be a great guitar player, you got to play guitar, a number of hours a day like I did. I could give tips about finding musicians and, what I did, but I just think it's going to be different for everybody. So I think it's really about, the thing I would suggest is it's about believing in yourself, believing that anything is possible, because anything is possible. We all have voices of doubt, all of us. Every song I've written, even ones that are on the radio, partway through I think, this song sucks, I should just delete it. So we all have those moments. We all have the moment of like, what the F am I even doing this for? Is this really what I want to do? But it's, it's knowing that those moments are going to come and they're going to pass. And, we live in a great, there is just a seagull party going on here. All right. We live in a time of great resources. So, where I used to have to read magazines and send away for cassette tapes, you got YouTube and Google, and you can find the state-of-the-art status quo on anything you want to do. And that's really the life hack. School and universities and all that kind of stuff is great. You can get invaluable knowledge and degrees and stuff, but nothing moves quicker with the times than the internet. So I think that we can all learn from like whatever you're into, get on YouTube and look what the state of the art is, and in that way you can see where the bar is. I think a lot of times people try to do stuff and they're kind of stuck in like the old version of how it's done. Maybe you're an athlete. Okay, well, what's the state of your sport now versus how it was back then? So it's about staying current, staying in action, and using the resources that are available to you.
Yeah, that's really great advice, and I think it's really key. You know what? Get started. Do something. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy. Doesn't mean you're not going to fail and, have struggles, because you obviously had struggles starting this up. Starting something is the first step.
Yeah, there's a great saying, and I'll probably mess it up, but it's something like the master or the expert or whatever has failed more times than the student has even tried. So many times when we're younger, we're new, we see where we want to go, we see the top of the mountain, and you're like, how do you get up the top of the mountain? It's like, dude, it took me 10 years, and I fell, and I tripped, and I hurt myself. You know what I mean? And we got to remember, the people who get where they're at is because they were okay with failing again and again. And to me, really, this thought of like perfection or failure, none of it's real. There's no such thing as failure. I think the only failure is to let your fear beat out your passion. Like if there's something you really want to do and you don't do it because you're scared, to me that's a failure. But trying to do it, starting a business because you dream of doing it and losing out, or getting a law degree and going, I hate practicing law, and going into something else, it's not a failure. You went after it because that's what you felt was right at the time, and there must be a reason that you're there, and it's going to be an important chapter of your story that you're going to take into other stuff. I left my first band and I got a day job with my brother doing all this computer stuff, and I hated it. But it taught me the stuff I needed to know, so when I started my own business, I had the skills. So
yeah, that's really amazing. Well, are there any current projects you're working on that you would like to share? Do you have any events coming up you'd like to tell everyone about?
There's no events, but Rock to Recovery is helping heal all sorts of people. Addiction and the opiate epidemic and mental health and suicides it's such a hot button topic, and so you can find us on the internet. It's Rock, ROCK2TO Recovery. I know you know how to spell recovery. You can give us a follow or a like on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. It's a big way you can support us. You can share, hey, you might know somebody who's a musician or struggling out there. You can, with a couple keystrokes, you can share about us with somebody who might need to know about it. That's really where it's at. And then, I got this new secret project, like I said, Human. We're on Instagram, HU3M3N. Sounds kind of like Radiohead meets Bob Moses meets I don't know what. But, yeah, that's what we're working on now. And we always check our DMs. We get hit up by a lot of people who are musicians struggling, or people struggling with addiction or whatever, and we're happy to help and connect. And it's really, one thing I've learned is it's about your network. When I created Rock Recovery, all my employees were guys I used to play music with and tour with. So what we learned from most every successful person you ever hear is that their success had to do with their network of friends, their network of teachers, their network of supporters, their network of colleagues, and that's a huge key. So
yeah, no, that's really great. Great advice. Well, thank you so much for taking us on your career journey today, Wes.
Hey, time, nobody wanted to hear a thing that came out of my mouth. It's an honor and a privilege to get to share what I've been taught by many great teachers.
Thank you for listening to Learn from Others, where we help others succeed by sharing success. Where will our next adventure take us? Subscribe to find out. If you know of someone who has a cool career story or occupation, contact Greg through Instagram at Greg Stanley LFO. That's GregStanley LFO. And we will see you soon as we learn from others together.